This is BS. This is BS. Why are we here? I am going to call corporate.
Who the hell gave this guy a video camera? Welcome, I guess, into another edition of BSing with Big Nate. Good luck.
Welcome into another edition of BSing with Big Nate. We're really we're working on a theme here this weekend, and we're gonna do some BSing about Mortal Kombat. Gonna be talking movies most of this weekend. Joined by a dear friend of mine, Lonny. He is somewhere in parts unknown at this time. Lonny, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on here, Nate.
All right, so you, like me, grew up in the 90s, and of course, Mortal Kombat was kind of a staple, at least for my childhood. It was Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2. I'm going to be honest with you, Street Fighter 2 was a little more important to me, but Mortal Kombat's still trucking along after all these years. You actually posted a status on your Facebook about the movie, and that's kind of what cued me in to take this, because I think it's doing pretty well. I think it's a pretty hot movie right now, and seemed topical. So first and foremost, I want your insight on the new Mortal Kombat movie.
All right. So, when it comes to this new Mortal Kombat movie, there's a lot at stake here. I mean, I remember Mortal Monday in 1993, I believe it was. I mean, that was like a big deal. From the first game to the first movies, hell, the action figures, everything else, there was a big legacy with, very large shoes to fill. And when it comes, they were like, oh, we're going to make a Mortal Kombat movie. I'm like, okay. I remember the originals. As a kid, freaking loved them, man. I mean, when you're kids, like the Super Mario Bros. Movie, you remember that one.
Yeah.
Double Dragon, when you're small, they're great. You try to rewatch them, it's like, I mean, it's subjective, man. Some people see it differently. That's fine. I try to rewatch them as an adult, and I was like, man, the magic just died right away. So I was like, let's see how this new Mortal Kombat goes. I can tell you this, they definitely used a much larger budget than they did with the original. The original, 18 million, and it was #1 box office hit. I mean, they actually did an amazing job, amazing enough to make some real money on it. This one, I was like, okay, I don't know where my expectations lie, but I turned on the movie and I was like, okay, they're building up. And then it was like, I guess they were trying to get backgrounds, it was like the beginning. And then they started with these crazy production values, like some of the things that were going on. It's like, okay, this makes sense. This makes better sense than the original. Some characters got rewritten, which is fine. I mean, it's what it is. So my first impressions was like, okay, they spent a good grip of money on this. I wasn't gonna not watch it. And then I was like, okay, it makes sense why certain characters have a heated rivalry, if you will. And some of the rewrites I didn't care for, though. I can tell you that right now. You remember the original, who the story circulated around? Liu Kang. They did him dirty on this one.
I think you're absolutely right. Liu Kang, easily one of my favorites. I've always played as Liu Kang, and something that kind of stood out to me as well. I also, my biggest takeaway is following. So you start with Hanzo Hasashi. That's where it opens, and then his kids like under the floorboards, and Lord Raiden comes and rescues the kid. So I'm thinking it's going to be about this kid, and I didn't really think about it. It's like it was. I don't know how many generations removed, and all of a sudden you've got Cole. He's having flashbacks and premonitions, and I'm not really sure about that version of Scorpion.
Now, I did enjoy that bit in the beginning, but I didn't understand exactly why Hanzo was being hunted like that by an obvious, a Chinese assassin. Like, where obviously Sub-Zero is speaking Chinese, or that's what he was called in, today time. He called himself Bihan back then. I was like, okay, but why was he there? What was the beef? I mean, did he have contact with the outworld back then? Oh, I didn't know, but I enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah, you definitely kind of got thrust right in the middle of it. And my other big takeaway on it, because I do see what you're saying with like some of the rewrites and stuff. It was an entertaining watch. I think,
Very.
like you said, that it definitely shows that they were willing to spend their money on it. And I think they did really good. My biggest comparison comes from Goro back in the original.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Goro in this. Like, the CGI wouldn't have been great back then, but that practical effects, I think it was a stunt man. And like, I think the lower arms were just like these fake puppety arms. And then the upper were the like stuntman's actual arms. And it just looked absurd. Whereas I think with this, there's a kind of almost like a cherry on top of everything. Another one that stands out is Kung Lao's hat.
Yeah.
They did so good with that. And
Okay, but I'm gonna speak on Kung Lao, man. They did him dirty. He basically got killed by a freaking underling. I mean, I get it. Shang Tsung was supposed to be in the original Mortal Kombat, like this ultimate guy, whatever, but for him to be as skilled as he is to get killed just like that, man, I was really upset. That's my favorite character, hands down. I mean, how when Mortal Kombat 2 came out, I was like, who's this guy? And then there I was throwing the hat, whatever else, and that crazy fatality that he would do. It cemented. I was like, this is my favorite from now on. He did that same thing. Sorry about that. Somebody's trying to call me. I'll call him later. Anyhow, that same fatality was done in the movie, and I was like, oh yeah. I mean, it was gross to watch,
it
but
was so gross, but they did so well with it. And that
I know.
was, you didn't really have that from what I remember. It has been a long time since I watched the original, but you didn't really have the fatalities weren't really there from what I remember. And if they were nothing like the game. Whereas with this, I think they went whole hog. Like, we're going for that R rating. We're gonna have the gore. I was reading a review. They gave the movie 2 stars, and it was like, the gore is as thick and nasty as the video game.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing is, the original game, you had to unlock the blood. There wasn't any gore in the first one. Now the second one, that's where they stepped it up. I mean, it got gross. It was meant for adults. I mean, the game franchise is supposed to be meant for adults, but the movie was marketed for kids because there's a lot of kids playing. Hell, we were the kids. Now here we are, grown up, and it's like, okay, if you're gonna rehash this, you gotta step it up, man. I mean, Deadpool was never meant for kids. They finally made a movie, R rating, and when these adults were like, let's bring our kids to the movie, and then they left angry after about 5 minutes of the movie playing. It's like, well, that R rating's not there for shits and giggles, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's like then they went out, Wolverine. What was that movie called? They gave it an R rating.
Was it called
Logan.
Yeah,
That's
Logan.
what. Okay, so with Logan, I mean R rating because X-Men, that was a big thing in the 90s. It's like, okay, you can't market a kid's product to the adults who remember it. I mean, you gotta really ring us in, kind of thing. Anyhow, about the movie, I'm sorry, I went through a rabbit hole there. Excuse me. Mortal Kombat, though, with the characters, as far as they're concerned, Liu Kang did get done dirty. The original, he was supposed to be the hero of the story. There was vengeance involved, everything else, and Liu Kang did what he had to do to, seek revenge.
Yeah, in this
They
one,
made him,
it felt like Liu Kang was like Raiden's assistant. Like I
yeah,
feel like in between fights, Raiden's sending Liu Kang out to get coffee and make like a Starbucks run.
right. And what bothered me is that they just dumped him down to where he had like no skills at all. This guy was shooting fire out of his hands,
Yep.
and they made it seem like, I don't know, like he was just like an apprentice, or like, yeah, he was able to beat guys who didn't. What was that arc they unlocked? They had to unlock whatever because they had the marking.
The
Arcana, I think.
Arcana, yeah.
So yeah, okay, easily he could be anybody without an Arcana. I'm like, great. But then when it came to fighting Outworld's best, they made him seem like he was just awful at everything. It's like, oh, he's just gonna go in there and get beat up. Another thing that pissed me off though was Kung Lao was, he was facing death. And instead of Liu Kang actually doing something, he goes, oh no, just kind of watches. I'm like, come on, man. Real Liu Kang would have, he would have bicycle kicked that dude right in the chest and stopped it. Kung Lao, they were supposed to be like, brothers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That relationship, they did make it very like, and I hate when movies do that. They had to explain their relationship because they didn't do a good enough job actually showing what their relationship was. And
Right.
I do think it's weak that Liu Kang never would have let Kung Lao die that way.
Not at all. And excuse me, when it started moving into like Nintendo 64 place, and then the next generation of consoles and all that stuff, they were still making games that were not just fighters for Mortal Kombat. There was one that was just based around those two. And Liu Kang, as great as he was built back then, as a character, Kung Lao was always considered to be like sensei, master, whatever else. He was like the master, and he was always, he'd follow along with Liu Kang, keeping a watchful eye on basically what he would consider his pupil, I guess. I mean, I like how they did Kung Lao. I'm still upset how he died and that Liu Kang let it happen, but hey, man. I did like this. I mean, did I like the centering of Scorpion and Sub-Zero? Sure. Cole Young, I thought he was supposed to become Scorpion, but
yeah, they were real vague about what he was, because then Scorpion shows up at the tail end, and that to me actually was the most badass moment of it all.
Right.
Once he starts breathing that fire.
Oh my God.
That was awesome.
Fatality. I was like, okay, he finally, exacted his revenge. I'm like, okay, so how, because they're gonna make a sequel, obviously. Yeah. How are they gonna build this one? Do any of these guys come back? I'm assuming it's gonna be a rehash of Mortal Kombat Annihilation, but with a much larger budget, obviously. Speaking of Annihilation, that one compared to the original Mortal Kombat movie was, well, it was pretty awful, sloppily written, hell, sloppily produced. There was only, two characters from the original, two actors that came back for that one. The rest of them were like, nope, I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah. And I think it, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, is that I kind of like this because we're getting to a point where, I mean, you had Mortal Kombat, what I'll call Mortal Kombat Light, and then this Mortal Kombat. It feels like they're definitely capturing that 90s demographic that has now hit maturity, and I really enjoy seeing it. Deadpool was another one of those. Although Deadpool,
Oh.
like I said, you mentioned the parents being pissed off. I haven't heard any backlash like that, so maybe they figured out Mortal Kombat. Deadpool should have been a giveaway that it's probably not going to be great. Mortal Kombat seems kind of definitive, but I do think you're right. I think there's going to be a sequel. They particularly they hinted at it with that poster of Johnny Cage, but like, are we going to just retread the same thing? Sub-Zero is going to be back, and we're going to be doing this all over again, or how would you like to see it play out?
Honestly, man, like I wish there was some way to bring Kung Lao back. Actually, you know what? I'll be honest. I feel like several of those characters shouldn't have been in this one specifically. They should have saved Kung Lao for the next installment. Cabal, like I don't even remember Cabal. Like I never had Mortal Kombat 3. I did try it, didn't care for it. As far as my favorite game from back then was 2 because it had a super dark theme. It was brutally hard, and to actually beat it took a lot. Took a lot of time. So when it comes down to it, like Cabal, I'm like, who is that? I don't even know him. But it was cool how they built the character. Great. Someone like Melina, I think they should have waited for the second movie. There's a good grip of them. I feel like they shouldn't have introduced yet. But considering the Mortal Kombat, I mean, you said MK, what's it called? You were playing MK11 last night. The whole series has added so many characters. I kind of get why they did. They added so many to this movie because they could do it. The characters were there. As far as how it's going to play out, he said that he'd come back with armies. I'm looking forward to it, honestly. But how is Earth going to counter that? I don't know.
No, I mean, yeah, because Kung Lao's out. He's going to have to come back. And I do think you're right. I think they were limited. The ability to tell the story was limited, I think, by them trying to do too much with too many characters.
Right. That's the thing is, like the original, it revolved around Liu Kang. That was the main, arc right there. And there's Scorpion, Sub-Zero. They hated each other. They never explained in the original. This time they did. I'm like, cool. And that should have been, second tier arc with, was it Sonya hunting Kano? Second tier. Then there's like the third tier where it's like, okay, we're the fighters who are left. We're gonna build up to the next movie, kind of thing, which would have worked out excellently. I mean, it played out. It is what it is. There are people that I know that grew up in Mortal Kombat, like us, that they're like, oh, the original was better. And I was like, okay, man, you have your opinions. Cool.
You should probably watch the original now, though. Before you.
Now, I watched the original now. I told him, I was like, look, man, don't
not.
rewatch the original because you're either going to still enjoy it or you're going to be like, wow, that aged like milk and I never want to see that again. Me, about 5-10 minutes into the movie, I turned it off. I was like, I can't watch this anymore.
Yeah. It was so with this, I feel like you kind of get what you expect going in. With the other, it was much more fantasy story. I like how they kept everything was limited to basically 3 or 4 places in this, which is kind of how the Mortal Kombat franchise worked. Is you've got these limited locations you're doing the fight. I think keeping it in that realm was a very good choice. I think less characters maybe. I did enjoy Kano, but I feel like the reason he was added was purely for comedy.
You're right on that one. The original Kano was uninteresting, unimaginative, just like in the games. Like, I never knew anybody said, oh, I really like using Kano. That was never a thing. I always thought he was just some bald jerk with a fake eye or something like that. This one, I love the remaster. his quick wit, his lack of concern for others. They built him extremely well this time.
Yeah.
I enjoyed his character this time around. I was like, they made him interesting. That's all I cared about. I was like, cool. All the characters had interesting. My least favorite character in the movie was Cabal this time. So
Cabal, you can do so much more with it, and they just didn't. They just kind of threw him in.
I feel like, well, that's the thing. They just kind of said, look, here's Cabal. He's some crazy guy wearing all this armor, or whatever the hell it was. Apparently, Kano did that to him, but I feel like at some point they could have added that in here. Like Kano's doing his thing and he mutilates this guy, and boom, now he's in an armored suit. Or was it Kano that did it? I can't remember.
Kano did it. It depends on which game you play, which story you get. I think the most recent retcon is that he did it to save Cabal's life.
Right.
So
I can't remember exactly the story that played out, but all I remember was this big armored guy. I just wasn't very interested by him, and I was, well, part of it is because that was later in the game series. Speaking of the game series, man, that's what I like about these game movies. Like, as long as you can write a really good story, because a lot of those games back then were very open-ended to interpretation. I mean, if you want to talk about TV shows, like Vikings, it's about 10% accuracy. Some of the stuff written in history was open to interpretation. One of the English kings, he died. They never wrote down why he died or how. So in the show, they made it comical. He swatted at a bee and he was allergic, and he starts laughing with the stinger in his hand still. And, soon after, he's dead. They left it open-ended. These games are the originals were super open-ended. I can't even talk. Open-ended, excuse me. So, of course, like the original movie, they wrote something in. I was like, okay, so the main thing is Shang Tsung, Liu Kang had a he had really bad blood with this man who was supposed to be like 1,000-something years old, and he appeared like he was dead already. The dude didn't even have legs; he just floated. And the second one, was like, wow, you shamed all of us, and you better redeem yourself this time. That kind of thing. Let's see. Characters. Cole Young, I was not impressed by, actually. You know what? Scratch Cabal. I hated Cole Young, I'll be honest.
And that suit they put on him looked ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like he was wearing a wicker basket.
I feel like they could have written him a lot better. I mean, it was cool. He kept seeing things in the mirror, like the fires of hell and his ancestor. He had no idea what it was, and then he finally did go full circle and find out that was his ancestor from Japan. He had no idea. I don't think he even knew he was Japanese.
I was gonna say I don't get the impression he knew he was Japanese either. Like,
he's like, I don't know who this man is, but
he starts as like an MMA fighter who's just terrible at defending himself.
Which is cool. And they trained him just enough to fight Goro. I'm like, great. But I feel like that stupid metallic suit thing with the blades on the side, it was so cheap, really cheap.
They blew all the budget on the fatalities.
Yeah, it was like, okay, we wasted a lot of the budget on Kung Lao's fatality, and then the fireballs is like, okay, let's just make him a really cheap
money.
character.
I got this wicker chair. We can deconstruct that shit and put it on him. All right. Well, we've talked quite a bit about it, and I think now, do you recommend people watch this movie or no?
Definitely. I mean, it's an enjoyable flick. There's things they're going to take away, and they're going to be like, hey, so this is what I didn't like, just like we just discussed. I definitely recommend give it a try. some people are just not going to like it. That's fine. You can't please everyone. I loved it. Hell, you loved it. A lot of people out there enjoyed it. I do recommend.
What would you give it out of 10?
Out of 10, let me see. I want to say 7 because there were some things I just didn't like, man. Like I said, Liu Kang was written as like a novice. Kung Lao was done very dirty for his skill level. There was a lot of things that could have been better, but hey, man, excellent flick either way.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend it. You're not going to get, like, it's Mortal Kombat. This movie's not going for an Oscar. It's not going for the Academy Awards. It knows its audience. Character development issues aside, it's an entertaining watch. It's a good watch. Have a couple beers, sit down with your buddies, and pop it on. I guess not really in. I don't think it's out on DVD. Just streaming on HBO Max or in the movie theaters. You
Correct.
Be at some movie theaters. I think I'm gonna have to line up with you. I give it a 7 as well. I'm excited to see where they go from here. If they can find someone douchey enough to be Johnny Cage, and what that story is going to look like. Lonny, thank you for joining me. I look forward to us talking again down the line. Maybe they'll get that sequel out sooner rather than later.
Right. If I'm correct, they're probably already filming it. Actually, what was it? Yeah, I know people in certain places, and they're saying that certain movies have been filming near where they work or otherwise. People, that live in Southern California have been giving me hints, if you will. Yeah. I told them, I was like, hey, look for guys filming Mortal Kombat. Let me know.
If they're really filming it now, everyone's just going to have like a Scorpion or Sub-Zero style mask. Just everyone. Liu Kang's rocking a mask. We'll see what happens. Lonny, thank you so much for coming on. I enjoyed this.
Of course, man.